Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. An extra hour of analysis and discussion on the topical issues of the week. Brought to you by Housing Finance Bank, a financial institution regulated by Bank of Uganda. Housing Finance Bank, we make it easy.
Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very good evening to you, and thank you very much for joining us on this edition of Spectrum Extra, live on Radio 1 FM 90, broadcasting from the Central Building, the home of this radio station. We are also live on our website, which is www.radio1fm90.com. Or that website, you look for the icon with the word Listen Live. Click on it, and you'll be able to listen to this radio station loud and clear. Radio 1 is also live on the different radio listening apps: TuneIn, Afromobile, UTV Channel, Radio Garden, and Stream Afrique. Those can be obtained from the Google Store of your smartphone. Download any, look for Radio 1 FM 90. And as long as you have an internet connection, you'll be able to listen to us from anywhere across this globe. There's also another option that is on your TV set. If you have a DSTV connection, look for audio channel 897. And on StarTimes, our audio channel is 97. My name is Kenneth Lukwagandason, your host. Today being a Friday, we normally review the major events of the week, but today we'll be focusing on the education sector, graduation and back to school. What are the emerging issues within our education system? Well, this week has been dominated by the 74th graduation at Makerere University. We saw a total of 131 being awarded PhDs, 1,587 got masters, 156 got postgraduate diplomas, 11,016 got undergraduate degrees, and 24 undergraduate diplomas, respectively. Now, the graduates, especially those who do not have jobs, are going to be out there looking for them. And there's a discussion there. What is it that is being taught at the university? Are we churning out people to solve problems, or people who are going to add on the challenge we have of unemployment? Many are wondering whether there is quality and standards in our institutions of higher education, and what needs to be done to actually improve it. Experts say that what is churned out by universities and other institutions depends mainly on the foundation that has been built, and that calls for reflection on what is being taught in secondary schools, primary level. And we know last week the primary leaving examination results were released, and we saw that figure, 18,000 pupils cannot advance to secondary education. Now, the previous year, the number is estimated to have been 20,000. And there is a question there about the high dropout rates. President Yoweri Museveni has been vocal on this, blaming the dropout rates on illegal charges being levied by school administrators. The question is, what can be done by this category of citizens who cannot proceed with secondary education? Now, we know very well, overall, education and skills development are considered critical in the National Development Agenda, and it's reflected in our National Development Plan and Vision 2040 under the Human Capital Development Pillar. Now, schools will be reopening on Monday, but already there is pressure and anxiety among majority of Ugandans, especially when you begin discussing the costs that are involved. So this evening, the panelists will be sharing their thoughts about these issues, but we also value your thoughts as well. So please do share with us using our WhatsApp line, which is 0703 090 090. My panelists: Professor Venansius Baryamureeba, Educationist, Chancellor at Ibanda University. He did serve as Vice Chancellor at Makerere University. He founded UTAMU University, and we know very well he did contest for the presidency in 2016. Good evening, Professor Baryamureeba, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening to you, and good evening, panelists. Good evening, viewers.
Also in studio, the Hon Stephen Mukitale Birahwa, Economist, political scientist, who is the immediate former Buliisa County MP. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us, Hon Mukitale. 2 weeks sabbatical.
Thank you so much, Kenneth. Thank you so much, Radio 1 viewers and listeners. It's nice being here to advocate for national dialogue, which actually one of our most important area is the area of ethos, values, which can only be done by the education system. Because the moment you miss it at the family level, you miss it at your church, and at your culture, the school can perfect you. That's why you find people come from different areas when they are born, but at the end of the university, they should be ideologically clear, they should have some pedagogy, they should have, so you miss it at school, you will never recover.
All right, Dr.
And
Sarah.
I congratulate the graduates. I hope they are trainable, I hope they have competence after 21 years of school.
Dr. Sarah Bireete, the Chief Executive Officer at the Center for Constitutional Government, Pundit on Human Rights and Governance Matters. Good evening, and thank you very much for making time to be with us here.
Thank you, Kenneth, and good evening, listeners and viewers.
Also in studio, Mr. Joseph Ochieno, member of the Uganda People's Congress, pan-Africanist, Pundit on Global Governance and Development Matters. Thank you very much once again for being with us here, Mr. Ochieno.
It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me. The last time you were looking for me on a very critical topic, I was away, I was up country, I was doing the national duties, and one of which was extension of making sure that I, with many of the Ugandans, saw off the resting of Cecilia Gual. And today I'm delighted to be here at in the topic that simply because it's education, and because it was education, I am here and I'm able to have a conversation with Professor and at any time with anybody else, including Comrade Museveni, at par.
Right, we'll hear your views here, this particular program, before you even proceed to go and talk to President Yoweri Museveni. I hope that is in the pipeline.
Talking to Museveni, and I'm saying...
Well, you're saying you're willing to have a discussion with him.
At par, a national dialogue to make sure that we settle him coolly down.
So that's the only area where you're willing to talk.
He's now in charge of UPC, you know, they will...
All right, let's begin this discussion with Professor Venansius Baryamureeba, Educationist on this table. We've seen graduations. Of course, you know the debate that follows. These people are getting out there to the world of the workplace. It's about competence. It's about how they have been trained, their ability to use the knowledge that they have acquired. But we're not only looking at Makerere University, but we are looking even at other universities and tertiary institutions, including Ibanda, where you are Chancellor. And we are wondering, are we getting what we deserve as a country and what the world deserves? Because when you get out there, you're going to compete against the global village that the world has become. Professor Baryamureeba.
Well, you said it very well. And I know even when you graduated, people were saying that graduates have no skills. But here you are moderating the panel. So, I mean, people have said a lot about the education system. But by and large, we are producing graduates that are relevant. And I want to give you a few indicators. If you get somebody with an upper second or first class, and this person goes to a university like in the West, in the US, in the UK, in Canada, and so on, they excel. They don't repeat the bachelor's degree, they go for master's, they go for PhD, and they excel.
In other words, the qualifications are equated.
Yeah,
to
and they find them okay.
There. Okay.
Yeah, they don't really make up. Now, if you look at even our primary education system, secondary, whoever leaves our primary system, they still go to other places and still excel. But looking on what is on the ground, not everybody is okay. You see, you can have a class of maybe 200, and you find maybe 60% are okay, others are not. So we have to improve on the issue of quality to ensure that everybody leaving the system has the minimum skills. We saw the recent results of Primary 7, where we talked over ungraded candidates. These candidates should have left at least with skills like in carpentry, maybe in cooking, catering, you know, something that, you know, like hands-on kind of skills. But you wouldn't say like you've spent 7 years, you have no skill at all and you're just leaving. So, and I'm happy that we'll continue having reforms within the education system. But one of the things that we need to really do is to ensure that when we are going to teach in these institutions, we also have the facilities for that. Because you've seen some schools where you go and you find almost there is nothing. Leave alone classrooms, you don't have small laboratories for students and so on. You come to universities, you'll find students are studying, but in some cases you find that some facilities are lacking in those institutions. So the issue of infrastructure, the issue of maybe support from government to ensure that all institutions have infrastructure, because education is a public good. You cannot leave education to the private sector providers. So they are there to complement that public good. So we expect government to come in and see how best can team up with the private sector to ensure that our institutions, like whatever leaves our institutions, you know, is good. Yes.
All right.
So by and large, I'm saying we are not there, but we are not like producing nothing completely. Something good is
I'll be
happening.
coming back to you to dig deeper
Yes.
on where you think we are doing well and where you think we need to improve. Let's hear from Joseph.
I generally, by and large, concur with the professor on the overall assessment, and also very, very specifically about the context of education in this country. I travel around the world, and I also meet many Ugandans, both home and abroad. One of the most critical things that has been very apparent anyway is that, in my opinion, in relative terms, there has been a drop in quality. I have family members, I have youngsters that I mentor and support and guide and work with, and I generally find that they're technically more lacking than my time. Number one. Number two, I get rather concerned by the apparent emphasis usually, and that's why I was delighted that you were able to invite me to this program, particularly on this topic, that usually is about changing all the system or not. I happen to believe that actually our educational system, taken from, if you like, the traditional Westminster kind of education, is actually generally not bad, because I happen to have worked with, and I continue to work with many of the people coming from those areas. The real issue is about infrastructure. The real issue is about quality. The real issue then, most importantly, about access. The number two,
And even the teachers.
structurally, and in that's why I was actually emphasizing part of that, including infrastructure, that we have graduates sometimes whose basic expressions as a literate citizen, people who went to universities, will be almost apparently wanting. But that sometimes could be that I'm possibly trying too much. I have met and have conversations with people with master's degrees, and you realize that elements of would-be critical thinking is generally absent. But then worse, go lower down and question that I know Professor was very generous to UPC much earlier, that in my time, you finish primary living exams, and if you're not able to go to secondary education, and lest we forget, many of us, if we have parents who are teachers, particularly primary school teachers, and they're not grade 2, grade 3, they'll be merely grade 2, that people are able to complete their primary living exams, not to go to secondary education, and then seek to go to become grade 2 teachers, and the grade 2 teachers who are competent enough to have made us the citizens that we are today. So what went wrong structurally in terms of the alternative elements of structured education? Professors talk about the tertiary element of education. That's one. And then number two, post that, if you go, say, to A-level or A-level, at every stage, pupils then had options other than higher education. You opt out of higher education, you go to technical institutions, tertiary institutions, whatever qualifications and skills you actually got there. I don't know that element of the detail, and Professor will possibly help us on that. Generally, people were very, very much competent. Post to that, at the closer end of your introduction, is, of course, we've churned out these people. And what is it? In my time, as you're waiting for your final results, you've got 2 jobs, job offers. Today is not there. And normally this regime would argue that there's so many graduates that they cannot catch up with jobs creations. And of course the economists in the room will say that, look, if the population projection is at 1.6 per annum, the economic growth is at 6%. So generally, therefore, we should be having a commensurate number of jobs accessed to these people. But very quickly, primary living exams came out last month.
We'll dig deeper. Those were just your initial
Sure.
submissions. Let's hear from Dr. Sarah. Your take very quickly.
Well, first of all, I want to celebrate with the women that we have more female graduates since 2020. Makerere University has been channeling out an increasing number of female graduates. It means that we are seeing the real results of the affirmative action principle.
Of the extra
in
point.
Institutions of learning. That extra point has reasons, and it has to stay. I know there are arguments of whether it's time for it to go or not. So since 2020, we have that increment, 50.5%, 51%, 52%, and this year we are at 53%. This is very good, and it's important to remind the viewers that the population of Uganda is 51% female. So it's normal to have these figures, and there's no need to worry.
Indeed.
Yeah, having said that, I want to add my voice on the general structure of the education system. Of course, we can't agree more on the question of infrastructure. When you see pictures coming out, especially the rural schools, you see shambolic structures, you see overcrowding. We are in the digital era. The rollout for the technology integration is slower than the population growth rate. When you go to the access to quality education, access to quality education is more of a preserve of the rich who can afford the A-class schools, who can afford the international schools. And if you look at the poor, this week alone, Daily Monitor has run 2 headlines of best performing PLE students crying out for scholarships. One of the best performing boys was profiled on NTV, and I know that he said he put his first choice in King's College Budo, and I know the school administration is looking at that possibility of a scholarship. But what does this mean for access to quality education for poor people? Especially given that UBOS has been channeling out statistics showing increasing levels of poverty, especially the dimensional poverty statistics that are alarming in northern and eastern Uganda, but also an indicator that there is more poverty in the rural countryside than the urban. And I think we need to bridge this gap at the policy levels. I thank you.
All right, and actually one of the students who was greeted with cheers at Makerere University during this graduation is Suvi Henry, who has become a symbol of from poverty to success. If you remember the story, how he arrived and how he was picked up by a good Samaritan to actually pursue the real course that he wanted of engineering, having been given another course at the university. Let's hear from Honorable Mukitale.
Thank you so much, fellow panelists. I would want to put this in the context. This is a census here. The children we celebrate graduating in the country, not only Makerere, we are told is about 500,000 every year at tertiary level. So at that alone, what do we need as a country which intends to industrialize, which intends to transform? Have we responded to what we used to call manpower planning? Sarah, sorry for using manpower, but that's what I used to call it. And and labor and industry. That the education system of UPE-USE we started 27 years ago. New in Buliisa, in Ibanda, in Mulanda, what will be required to transform this community. And therefore, when we did UPE, we knew we are in pastoralism, we are in this, one to add value. So, by the end of the education cycle, the planners of this country, the school's institution, because you can't fix it from the university, it starts from... In Israel, a nursery kid knows the environment is important and is aware of the security issues. The environment. So the moment you don't plan it from primary, you have a problem. My maiden submission in NRM caucus in 2006 in June at Africana Hotel, to my party, to my chairman, was that UPE and USE, without vocationalization, without the BTVET, and the foundation subject which must be compulsory, like health science, not biology, accounts, some bit of commerce, entrepreneurship, is a disorientation. The president actually stood up and clapped for me. Unfortunately, I've left Parliament without revisiting that. And I was speaking as the son of a head teacher. So the old system. I was speaking as now an education. I came to Parliament when I was already a director of schools. And I knew, and I had sponsored so many children at the foundation. and they end up with S6 useless, S4 useless, even graduates. And it's a very high cost.
Yeah.
For the senior, the Ivory Tower group we are discussing, if you do education for 19 years, from baby class, at an average of 4 million per term, minus food at home and other things, you are spending 12 million a year for 20 or 19 to 20 years. Do you know that is a cottage industry? You can have a Massey Ferguson tractor in a sub-county in Ibanda, Umulanda. You can also have a dairy cooler and a maize miller.
All right.
So how come we can spend in the education system of 21 years what is enough? Because for me, who owned some chicken and goats in primary, I wonder what am I doing with this education? But finally, we are only speaking of the 7% who reached tertiary level. The 93% of Ugandans disappeared in primary. 70% did not make it to P7. At secondary, a lot dropped. So when we are discussing this problem, please, let's look at it holistically.
All right.
From baby to the few you see, the 7% you are celebrating.
All right, let's go for a break now. When we return, we'll break up this discussion into 3 segments: primary, secondary, and higher education, to see the gaps that need to be fixed in those particular areas as we build for the future. Stay tuned for Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum Extra continues after this break.
Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra, live on Radio 1 FM 90. We are focusing on our education system in light of the graduations that we had. We had a primary living education results being released there. We know schools are reopening on Monday, and so we are trying to reflect on the education sector to try to understand the kind of things that need to be actually fixed for us to actually have a human capital that will help to transform this country as envisaged under the National Development Plan and Vision 2040 that seeks to see Uganda a more developed country considered to where we are right now. And let's begin this discussion by focusing on the specific areas. And we'll begin with primary education, which is considered by many as the foundation for taking us to the next level of education. I'll begin with you, Mr. Joseph Ochieno. I cut you short as you wanted to dig deeper with the PLOE results, but holistically speaking, what are some of the issues you see with our primary education level, the things that you think need to be addressed for us to actually move in the same in the direction that other countries are moving? Like you said, you exposed, you moved to different parts of the world, and you've seen the things that they're doing much better than us.
In fact, more importantly, that I'm old enough to have seen what this country did right. That made me, at the introduction, actually said that a correct educational environment ensured that I came from a very average family, granted grade 1 teachers home, meaning the lowest of the lowest teaching in Agongera, go to a top Mwiri school, and I keep on repeating this, and sat in the same class with the best people in the country that year who had come from Nakasero, and reached a stage in which today I'm able to have an average conversation with Mr. Museveni and give him 100% complete, decent advice on education, except he's unlikely to take it. This is the point. As the results came out in my book, which was really then the cream, once upon a time, of education, quality education, Professor was, I think, and I were talking about it during break, the question of teachers and salaries. Primary education, that it was at the time, was moving towards universal primary education. We're using towards universal primary education. One of the few conversations, and again, of course, I'll upset you a bit again to mention Milton about him. He told me this in 2002, since we're talking about the future, at his balcony in Lusaka, when we were actually reviewing the educational system and the prospects for education going forward in this country. And we're looking at both universal primary education and universal secondary education. And I think I was trying to fidget through Google. You guys know about Wikipedia, just to check on how much government provides for per child, if any of you guys are able to have those figures at UPE. Our position was that as early as the 60s, we had recognized that education is the #1 equalizer, and that if we are to transform this country, and if it will give life chances to every child in this country, we needed to make sure that we're able to provide decent education and holistic decent education for both girl child and boy children, but also to all communities. That is why the equalizer, Stephen, was such that the big public schools that we radically built in the 60s, secondary schools merely, you're talking about primary education, that children were able to leave Mulanda, were able to leave Buliisa, they were able to leave Nyabushozi, and go to study in Koboko, in Moroto. That brought the nation-state system, where there are guys who've gone to Nyakasura, there are guys who've gone to Torokoli, there are guys who've gone to Mwiri, basically bringing people together. So, but it was about quality education. We were able to build, equip, stock, staff, and motivate teachers, the point that Professor was trying to talk about. So taking back what Old Milton was saying, at the recognition of the import of education, here in Uganda, not only in Africa, here in Uganda, we're saying that we wanted to make sure that universal primary education came in this country as early as 1972. Of course, that was interrupted by the coup of Idi Amin. When UPC returned in 1981, another 10-year program with the opening up of the third world schools, some people call them Tata schools, Tata Laura schools, every sub-county across the country, sub-county across the country. Universal primary education was supposed to start in 1997 on that program. Lest we forget, 1991, as a 10-year program. What it says that on the basis of the economic reforms in the country, that's why I was trying to provoke Stephen, OECD nations, meaning the development partners, came in and said that, no, this is quite impressive. You can actually do it as soon as 1987. And what he told me that, Joe, I said no to them. I refused. I wanted to stick to our 10-year program. And the reason is because I want to cut this short. The reason is I believed that the 10 years would give us opportunities to complete the building of the new secondary schools, to complete the training of more teachers, to complete the turning around of our economies, to complete the creating of enabling environments across the country. So that by 1991, the Kisoko High Schools, the Kireo Secondary Schools, the Nyambushozi SSs across the country would have been fully built again like the Bukedi College Kachongas, the Wanyange Girls of this world. Meaning, therefore, by the time you're starting this program, it's not about 300 children under a tree or a classroom block falling. In fact, maybe we should have started with a minute's silence for the pupils who are reportedly died in my Bukedi. I don't know the specific area. Just within the last week, there are videos doing the rounds in a grass-type class. You can't believe it's this generation. So he was saying, at that time, we know that by the time we start, there'll be enough classrooms, enough scholastic materials, enough teachers, enough money salaries to pay for them, enough provisions, including what Professor was trying to talk about, in this case, libraries and laboratories and all other stuff, meaning that you go into universal primary education without compromising the quality of education. Yeah, sure.
When we joined Makerere in 1988, I initially went for education, though later I ended where I ended. There was a debate on the education white paper. There came a Kajuvi report. So the UPE, which we implemented in 97, is another version of the original education white paper and the Kajuvi report. Together with the economic recovery program of 1981, one way of taking Uganda back was supposed to bring in that education system. So we are about 30-something years late to have dealt with the challenges which were raised then. So when in 97 we jumped into UPE, we changed the order. Even NRM did not pronounce for all. NRM pronounced for children. Yeah. We abandoned it. But
as we encourage production.
Yes, it was for children. But the original one is you train teachers, you create the infrastructure, then you enroll. But also, it was not even free. There's a difference between universal and free. But because again of politics, we said it is free. RDCs, DPCs that started arresting those who talked of lunch, those who talked of uniform. You can't even go to school without uniform. So This is where we adulterated a very good policy. It's in writing.
So the foundation
the
of
professors were pushing. Because I was a student at this very time, you know, when they had to discussing now, I even laugh. It was a time of ideological, the days of the Carrascos, the Jukos, the Mujajus, the Professor Nsivambi on this side, the Mamdanis. The guys who talked of the living wage. And the cost of education we haven't answered up to today. We are all given jobs in government. The debate died. So mediocrity came in, hypocrisy came in. We lost merit and competition. So we are discussing a very old problem.
All right. Very quickly, conclude your point.
You know, we not only thank you for this. This is a program that we possibly need to return to as a subject because it's that critical. I have actually argued that right now in Uganda, beyond all the niceties after the introduction of the program, is that we actually now have education appetite in this country. When I look back to my own family, my own immediate family in Agongera, I know children who cannot sustain themselves in primary schools. I know one or two that have promised uniform. I know one that have promised fees under this UPE program. What we've not talked about, I think Sarah was trying to allude to it much earlier, is that how many of these start, regardless of whether those universal or otherwise, Stephen, do not sit for PLE, and where do they go? Meaning, therefore, that the original universal primary education was supposed to be absolutely universal, free, and compulsory. That's the UPC way. Universal, free, and compulsory. And next to that was enabling an economy in such a manner that there was capacity to make secondary education also universally free for those who were willing to do so. Because if you don't choose to go to, meaning higher education, you know there's opportunities for you now to go to tertiary institutions, as it were. It is so important that this cannot be a mere party political question.
Well, Professor, you heard from Joseph, but you've also heard from Mukitale that possibility that even the foundation of the primary education system we have now is crooked, something we rushed into without following what the experts had actually guided. Could that be a problem that we need to revisit?
But you know, when you have an education system, I mean, you continue reviewing. And that's why recently we came up with the competence-based curriculum.
And there is a review board actually going on right now.
So since you talked for almost an hour, I'll use a few minutes so that the other colleagues
all right.
can also make their point.
Very quickly.
But I think we need to look at continuous improvement. And the other thing is also the government keeps on reviewing. Like in the coming budget, they are planning for 400 billion shillings approximately to ensure that we have proper universal primary education in this country. And I hope, and free, this time it will be free. I hope that happens. But I have to re-emphasize that even if we don't have like the classrooms, if we have good teachers in all the schools, kids should be able to learn. Why do we have a situation where a kid goes to school, spends 7 years, and lives without any skill? In those days, teachers would ensure that if you go to school, you cannot finish without any skill. They really push you hard. You know, they would ensure that you have to learn. So I think we need to involve the community, because some kids now don't even go to school. They mean the community and people are not bothered. So we need to actually take it into our hands as Ugandans. And my honorable here is speaking as if he was not in NRM. But you need to go back and reform NRM properly. And I think they should put you on the NRM manifesto committee so that these good ideas, they sink in. But having said that, for me, I believe in continuous improvement. I don't want to talk about third improvement, but continuous improvement.
What should we improve in that area of primary education?
The basics. If you look at primary level, let us ensure we have qualified teachers that have been trained. Let us ensure they have facilities. You know, at primary level, you are testing numeracy, literacy, writing, then you add a little health science, you know, this science stuff. So if students can master mathematics, like, you know, how to add and all that stuff, numeracy, English, and then they're able to write and read. So I think we can make some steady progress.
But what is happening? You're talking about skills.
Yes.
A few minutes ago, you just talked about skills.
Yes.
What would that require?
What it require? Because you cannot give what you don't have. We have to start with the teachers. And then we have to give the teachers what use. Let me tell you like something I oppose it and I still oppose it. This thing of government coming in and starting micromanaging universities, public universities.
We'll reach that level.
Yes. I mean, the issue of you need to what I'm talking about is if you are going to train, let's say, you are talking about everybody should study. Don't create a class of 200 students, 100 students, expect them to study. How? They will tell you they have come up with methodologies that you can use to train a big class. It can't work. The staff-student ratio is so important. So let us recruit enough teachers, but let us also train them, because where are you going to recruit them from? After that, let us ensure that the facilities are available. Let us also involve the communities. Because when we remove this issue of parents should not pay anything. It should not even, they don't even bother about lunch, they don't bother about uniform. And so, they left everything to government.
But that's the discussion the president is
school where people don't pay anything.
That's the debate the president is actually pushing for.
The parents, some of them don't pay anything.
The president is saying the government should be able to offer free education.
20,000. But the government puts in money directly for other things.
I think what she's saying actually, even what the government puts in comes from us, the Ugandans. I think that's what she's saying.
But also it's very little, because at primary level the capitation grant is about 20,000 per child. At secondary level, 130 per child.
But
and at higher secondary level, 240.
But you know what most Ugandans have done now?
What can this money do?
If you go to the community, people are busy producing, because we encourage people to produce. Level of productivity is very low. You know, people used to work because they are going to pay graduated tax. Now people sit in the villages, drink their alcohol, produce. They have enough kids. So even when you talk about that we have university, where is this money going to come from? People are paying taxes a few.
President Museveni is adamant that actually the government of Uganda...
Even the oil is not coming out. We continue talking about oil.
And from Parliament this week, we had the minister in charge of higher education, John Chrysostom Mugimbo, saying that cabinet has resolved.
You should be the first advisor before you recommend Stephen.
Cabinet has resolved that next financial year, funds should be set aside to actually start rolling out total free education.
Yes, the 400 billion. But you know, that's why I'm saying that money is coming. But also my worry on that 400 billion is that corruption is so high. Most of that money is going to disappear. Recently, I saw somebody inaugurating, I don't want to mention his name, a school worth about, was it 2 billion shillings or 3? In that range.
A private school?
No, a government school somewhere in Western Uganda. And if you look at the structure, it was a lab or something. It can't cost more than 300 million. What cost like 3 billion shillings? So corruption is also real.
And you fear
people in service
they will
delivery
eat that money. Dr. Sarah, what do we need to change at the primary level? I know you also are a member. Is it a member of the board? A member of the PTA?
Yes, I am a serious stakeholder in the education system.
In one of the big schools in this country.
Well, I think what we need first change is the funding. What support do we give the education system? If we say there is universal primary education, UPE, USE, how much money are we talking about? I just want to use 2 examples. Recently, when NRM was celebrating their 38 years of bad governance, the president took a picture.
Those are your words.
Yes, yes, I am.
Those are your words.
This is my opinion as a governance actor.
Okay.
The president held a meeting on the roadside towards the
UCC is working very hard.
Yeah, towards the areas of Ginger, and he said most of the people were school dropouts, and he was wondering what is happening in his own, words on his X handle.
Yes.
So he said, these children have said they have all dropped out of school.
That is
Why?
his opening speech.
Yes, for 38 years of anniversary. What has he presided over?
But he gave explanation.
No, wait.
And the first lady was more pro.
And he said he wants to probe. And the Minister of Education was right there, seated on the road.
So I was asking the questions. They had the question.
The Minister of Education.
The Minister of Education traveled with the president.
That is the crisis. So you get universal primary education.
Don't take crisis. They are so concerned.
No.
Can we allow Dr. Sarah to submit? Please proceed. Your protection.
Yeah, you fund. I don't know where this money is per term or per year. 20,000 at primary education. What can 20,000 do? We all know how much it takes if you have to provide meals for these children, if you are to provide
That one is for chalk and a few things.
teaching materials.
Government comes in with heavy money directly for other things.
So this capitation grant is for teaching
Small
materials.
things like chalk and so on.
So what is universal? Why do we say this is universal education? I know government covers the bill of education, of salaries for government schools. Which infrastructure?
In some places there is, in other places there isn't.
Yes, because we see the collapsing schools
Yes.
with the iron whatever, dry banana leaves.
And I see the schools in Tororo, and I see my own former schools.
Studying under trees. We see so many schools without even a single Peter tree. And this is what we call, universal primary
The
education.
community put up a pit tree.
No, but we need to discuss now.
A classroom with just
Because at one time, at the beginning of
for
UPE,
communities to come in.
Professor, at the beginning of UPE, government was even saying they should arrest schools who are charging more money than what government is providing. So what community are you talking about? What is the purpose of government when you tell people that you want to arrest them and you want to take over the whole Bureau of Education? Yes, because this is the politics now. When you go to Vision 2040, out of the 5 top priority areas, we have infrastructure and human capital development. If you go to the new budget framework that was passed just this week, the funding for human capital development is
almost at par with that of security and
it is at
president's
the
office.
same level with security and governance. Really? Are we really serious in developing a quality education that can advance the development of this country?
All right. Let's hear from
Just 1 minute.
Very quickly.
Because I want to also add that under SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 4 is very clear. Every country must provide fully equitable and quality primary and secondary education. How far are we when it comes to meeting this goal? We are just a few years away from 2030. What are the reporting indicators for Uganda? I think we are doing badly.
All right. Let's hear from Honorable Mukitale.
Yes.
Primary level.
The country is privileged. You can have a panel here to provide solutions to the mess in the education system. If we can come up with the right problem statement, the right hypothesis, we are mixing up very many things. If the planning and policy is right, before you rush into the funding
and implementation,
you do a delivery mechanism. Most of the schools in this country have foundation bodies. All our leaders, up to our age, we went to the best, Catholic founded, church founded, Muslim founded, and they are still performing best.
yes.
But government, instead of complimenting them and giving bursaries, decided to take over the schools. So government is doing what it's supposed to do. The delivery mechanism should be to the effect that government complements the foundation bodies, because in them they had to impart more values, holistic, to churn out a student who has some values. No wonder even at university now, you see and in cause lawyers are saying, and other professionals, they are the best. I had challenges of funding. They are also coming up.
That's now an advert.
Now, the private universities also will do well, like private schools have been doing very well, because they have that foundation body which has more supervision. By the way, private schools pay less money to teachers than government schools.
Professor
Let me congratulate.
Baryamureeba says also UTAMU is doing very well.
Yes, and he's my neighbor. I want him to grow faster.
All right.
Let me also congratulate Provo Mbarara and Ochieno. Before, it was Wakiso, it was Mukono, it was Kampala leading. Now, one should make a research and inquire and say, what has brought Mbarara and Ochieno? Possibly these resources which are lacking in other parts of the country are now there. The infrastructure you are talking of, good PTAs. Now, can I tell you, the education policy, the Kajubi report, and the UPE which we adulterated had a very important component called the stakeholders' responsibilities. Before I was made poor by politics, for 3 years, I moved districts of
Don't
Buliisa,
scare my youth.
of Masindi, and because Buliisa was still under Masindi, 97.
Yes.
And Chigoroya was under Hoima.
All right.
Giving those books to every school for you to take home is parents' responsibility. That's when the Ministry of Education was still under experts. And what was it saying? Uniform is yours.
You mean today we are not experts in education and sports?
No. Can I give you, that's your word. But you are a good counselor, I know, to the senior people in the ministry. I passed Kadinawi school just jogging these days. Bidandi Sari, who used to promote a lot of things, either as KCC as a Nakawa, my MP in Nakawa, started the foundation of Kadinawi Primary School hall, what do you call it, multi-purpose hall. When we brought UP, we say, don't ask parents for any shilling.
Exactly.
The building is at a ring beam with the foundation stone laid by Honorable Vidandi. This is how the government policy was negative, was counterproductive, was reactionary to what already the parents, the communities, the cooperators, the religious leaders were ready. My father did not become headmaster under UPE. He built 2 schools without any government money. That was the cooperatives and churches doing it. Within the church system and the mosques and the Catholic, they have an inspectorate department. Very clear. You are in the chapel in the morning, you do this. So they do a lot of handwork. Most of this the carpentry, I want to thank the president finally for accepting this killing going on only in Kampala, not in our villages.
After 38 years, yeah.
So what do you want to
The
change?
Catholic Church has a lot of this program. You come out with some skilling. You've made your table. You've made what a professor has been saying. So what we need to agree first of all, let's stop denial.
All right.
Let's first agree what went wrong, and we know.
Okay.
So when we have the right policy and planning, we agree on the right delivery mechanism, we do the costing. When you know the costing, I ended last time by saying, when my NRM government swallowed all the man who told the president that you have enough money in the budget was my lecturer, Banugire. He was given tax policy, that was the end. Professor Sochi was given trade and something export, that was the end. It's only Mamdan who said, but if all of us go to work with executive, who will give the idea? They said you are utopian. So Professor remained there, went to research, sit Maiza or something. All other people who were bringing the correct thinking at the end of the Cold War
went into government.
So that, where am I bringing?
Why aren't they put in government
This
to
is
implement their ideas?
No, they were silenced.
All right.
This is how
Let's go for a
private
break
everything came. Education is a public good.
Yeah.
Government must provide. And government is actually going outside their mandate. We want to put cost of hospitals,
All right.
cost of schools.
Let's take that break.
Provide good free public schools. Only the Sarahs and professors will go to private schools because they have excess money. But when my poor people,
There you go.
and Ibanda, Chamunga, have been taken care of.
All right, let's go for that break. When we return, we shift our gears and look at what needs to be improved in the secondary education category before we also connect it to the higher component of it. Stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum Extra will continue after this break.
Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90.
Thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra live on Radio 1 FM 90. We are talking issues education, trying to look at the different challenges that we have in the different segments of our education system to be able to give some level of advice to the people that are concerned to see how we can address them. This discussion is occasioned by the fact that this week was dominated by the 74th graduation at Makerere University, but we also saw exams, primary living exams coming out, and schools are reopening on Monday, and you know what that means for millions of, hundreds of millions and millions of parents out there who are trying to make all ends meet to make sure that their children go back to school. My guess Honorable Stephen Mukitale Birahwa, economist, political scientist, immediate former Buliisa County MP. Dr. Sarah Bireete, the Chief Executive Officer at the Center for Constitutional Governance. Mr. Joseph Ochieno, member of the Uganda People's Congress. Professor Venansius Baryamureeba, Educationist and Chancellor at Ibanda University. Now, let's shift our gears and look at the level of secondary education. And I'll begin with you, Dr. Sarah Bireete. What do you think needs to be touched there? We have seen the government trying to address the issues of the number of subjects that are being done in the secondary level. We are seeing introduction of skills and a certain grading system which culminates into the grades you'll be getting at O level and A level. You know how they're doing it. What's your take with the changes that are occurring, and maybe what else needs to be addressed so that we can have that smooth transition? And in fact, one other biggest problem we didn't tackle is the issue of dropout at primary level.
Primary, yes.
Many enroll, but only a few
it's a national crisis.
Get into the secondary level.
Yes, maybe if I begin with the 1 million.
What can we do with them, by the way?
This is a lost generation. How can we fail to track and trace children? Because what information do we get? What is the biodata of children in schools? You get the child, you get the parents, you get the location, where they come from. How can we fail as a country to trace school dropouts, to monitor and evaluate enrollment, and make sure that these people complete the process they've enrolled for? I think this is a big indicator of the failures in the Ministry of Education, if they cannot trace their own people as custodians of educating society. It's a big weakness. I know that in the secondary school level where I participate at a parental level, because I'm an educationist by profession, we trace our children. Even when the term begins and some children have not reported, the administration makes calls. They even visit the areas. So how can people fail? How can the ministry fail to put a monitoring and evaluation system to control schools where there is biodata for every child that enrolls?
It is underfunded.
I think that is also an excuse of incompetence. Right. I know there are challenges of underfunding, but there is also incompetence. And this should be condemned.
All right.
When you come to secondary school level, I happen to be a pioneer parent for the new curriculum, and I know what we are struggling with. Just after Christmas, I was looking for textbooks. I went to Aristoc bookshop. This is the biggest bookshop we have in Uganda. Even the attendants in the bookshop don't know whether they have textbooks for the new curriculum. This is a fresh experience, just this year.
Well, the textbooks were...
I am coming. You see what Aristoc is the most organized. I'm coming to that. I am coming to that.
They are not for sale.
No, they are for sale. So I called the NCDC. I called the NCDC to ask, where do I get some textbooks that I needed? And they said they are available in other bookshops. So I went to the bookshops. I struggled to find textbooks for the new curriculum. And then when it comes to revision books and question papers, they are still under review. If you have a child today under the new curriculum, and these are candidates, there are no revision question papers for the new curriculum.
Can I give information, sir?
Yes.
Last year was supposed to be the last S4 examining of the old curriculum.
Yes.
This 2024.
Yes, the pioneers, the candidates.
They are supposed to be the pioneers.
Yes.
But unfortunately, we are not ready. I hope it has been announced officially that it may be deferred for another 2 years. So
that happens to
children who are tearing the books that they had finished last year, they will be, and they were saying if you missed last year, you will not repeat because it will be a new curriculum. I hope that communication comes clearly from government. Parents don't know yet. But what we had at the end of the year...
schools don't know.
So can we get that clarified also from Ministry of Education?
Because if you say that the system that students have been trained and examined under since senior 1 is not going to work
for lack of
at
funding,
examination,
for lack of the,
then what system is going to work?
The trainers of trainers during COVID did not train the others. So the teachers were not prepared. The equipments were not there. The government schools did not get what they were supposed to.
You know, this is really too disappointing and too disheartening. Because the struggle with the new curriculum, I know that many teachers have adjusted, at least in a school where I have leverage to sit and examine. And I also chair the academics committee, I know that. But how many schools have shifted? Because we are now talking of the A school. I would like to have a picture of the average schools. How are they adjusting to this new curriculum? My worry is that revision bit.
All right.
And rollout of teaching materials.
As of February 23rd, 2022, the Minister of Education and Sports had announced a distribution of books to all government and private secondary schools. And they told us at that time 80% of the textbooks will be for regular use, while 20% of the materials consist of textbooks for reference purposes. So, going by this circular issued by the Minister of Education and Sports, one would say the books are there.
Ghost books?
The school has some books. At least where I have knowledge, I don't know the others. The schools have some books. But how many books do you need? For example, if candidates are in a library, do you have a copy that is accessible to everyone? Or do you have at least a quarter because they can't all read the same subject? If you have a candidate class of 200 students, which is the average in most schools, do you have at least 50 books for revision per subject?
Maybe they're on the computer.
All right. In total, the minister said it was distributing 15 million textbooks. Let's hear from Joseph, secondary education.
You know, everything that we're saying here just confirms that this is an experimental regime, a regime that it's an experiment, trial and error.
Can you keep it a national debate?
And it's absolutely national.
So that don't scare everybody on after the problem.
No, it's absolutely national, and everybody listening and watching would have problems. They would be the ones with problems if they have problems with the approach we are taking in this conversation. As I said, I offered to suggest that your program leads, maybe we revisit this topic because that is important. Education is the #1 equalizer. And the biggest mess that NRA did in this country was to kill education and to kill health, meaning to privatize education and to privatize health and turn it into profit. So back to this, really. To talk about merely textbooks not being available in schools. I was a class monitor from primary 1. But as early as primary 1, I was responsible for distributing those counting things, you know. In P2, I was responsible for distributing textbooks. Now, to hear what Sarah is saying...
And there was a word not for sale.
That was actually the latter bit of it. There was actually almost no need, because no people need, because every school had these books, you know. And so I am a relatively lucky parent at the stage that I have fantastic kids that have gone beyond education. And my younger one is elsewhere relatively okay. I won't call it privileged. So I'm really not very familiar with this. But it's absolutely shocking to establish the fact that what Sarah is saying, that even the big schools, the question of books, and that you go to bookshop and you find that these textbooks are not there. So really, from the beginning of this conversation, there is no way in which we cannot hold the government and the Minister of Education directly responsible and playing with the lives and livelihoods and future of our people. I said that when we're talking about pushing universal and primary education to be universally free and compulsory context, what Sarah is saying, and we're talking about secondary education here, how we could make security budget the same as education and health, human capital and health combined, tells you there's something fundamentally wrong, especially therefore if you put security in that and you have the incapacity to basically trace young people who go truant, which is the word for missing class, missing school, you know. So this information should be there, meaning that we hold parents and we monitor many of these things at a particular level. To the fact that we have 1 million young people who lose out, then we go to secondary school, secondary education, and we are struggling basically merely with textbooks. That when I went to Mwiri, and I went to Mwiri after the torture of Idi Amin Gaddafi's friends, you know, breaking systems, but I still have relative access to reasonable textbooks in the 70s, early parts of the 80s.
But you also know there are students who studied without textbooks and passed in rural areas.
So, Professor, I don't know what point you're making here, because it's also true that for me, I'm one of the few clever ones who could have done that. But if we choose that, actually, there will be some people who do that. Then let's go ahead and pick those ones who study without textbooks. Here we are simply saying that, well, you need to be able to have to access them, whether or and it's up to you. At second level, you need them, and particularly science texts. Even then, actually, even arts. I don't know how you don't have a Okotbe texts, and you're going to be able to do literature if you don't have it for yourself. And I remember we used to have this battle that Sarah was trying to talk about, that, okay, maybe in the unlikely event that in the library you've got your copy, you change with the other. I'll read Okotbe text tonight, and I'll read maybe Ngugi wa Thiong'o's the following day. I mean, then, by morning I'll have done. And we can do that. But within reason, you must have access to this. No, the bottom line here is quality, access, and resourcing. And resourcing is public. Professor is suggesting some nuances here. No, education is a public thing. The state needs to begin to mobilize resources, and make sure that we pump to build schools. You're talking about parents building toilets. I think it's actually a terrible conversation for us to have today, that parents should be able to build a toilets for a secondary school like Isoko High School, which UBC founded nearly 40 years ago, and we're able to build quality secondary schools like Nabasusa Girls in 7.5 years.
You chose to answer your own question, but let's hear from Professor Baryamureeba.
Because I'm passionate.
Secondary education.
Yes, on this issue of secondary education, I mean, let me say this. We can sit here and lament and say everything is not going on well, but I see something good is going on. We see students going to school every time. They study. What we are talking about, that the quality is not the same across board. We've gone to several schools, Some teachers try. But in some schools, the teachers' quality is still low. The facilities are not that good enough. But for me, I want us to focus mainly on the issue of what should we be teaching at even secondary school level, at O level, at A level. I think we are specializing a lot. For me, I feel we should have a system where mathematics and English or literature are compulsory all the way through.
Mathematics, English, and literature.
I mean, when it comes to A level, I think it's just literature, right? In English. So,
Maths and English prof is already
compulsory.
No, I'm thinking even at A level, it should be compulsory all through.
Sub-math.
It's not enough. Want it compulsory all through. It helps. So that you add on. Like what I'm saying is that if we have like 9 subjects at O level, when we move to A level, let us reduce them like to 6 or 5. But math and English should remain all the way through. And it's going to help. I know people who did literature, history, and
I also did math, by the way.
You did math?
I did math at A level.
Yes. And it's good. It helps you to, So what I'm saying is that those, we need them, They should remain. And the other thing is, we need facilities across the country.
Yeah.
If we want to provide quality education, when we decide to say we are teaching math, we are teaching physics, we are teaching chemistry, let there be facilities across the country. Now, we talk about the security budget vis-a-vis education budget. I would like to say that actually security is also important. But you see, the country, we don't have enough resources. And if you look at places like Libya, you can no longer, even if you want to teach, you can't teach there because it's highly insecure. So we are lucky that we are a bit secure. This country, we are still secure, but we still need more money in the education sector. The question is, where should it come from? This oil, I've monitored oil since 2001. And they can't tell you 2026 won't come out. But we are hoping, but it won't come out.
But at what cost?
It will not come out.
When will it come out?
Mukitale,
Without
secondary level, very quickly.
Yes.
Now, I have told you that, first of all, the issue of curriculum, the issue of access, the issue of cost runs across the education system. From ECD, which Uganda is practicing without making it officially government policy, to the university level. Now, I already said that if you finish P7 being oriented to have some skilling, then you must have a skill to pursue from S1. That skill, I will amend a bit from what Professor is saying. Maths and English is a good foundation up to Senior 4. What you need to be doing at that level is now a bit of entrepreneurial accounting and bookkeeping. You will need it whether you are a doctor, you are an engineer, ICT, you will need some bookkeeping.
That's actually interesting.
Then you need agriculture. Agriculture, because we all come from some largely a background of agro. But when I was in P3, I was in Kuchunda. So where do I get it? Making the milk. And also bongo, which you are now paying a lot of money.
Yogurt.
But I had it as a traditional puitira, and I know them as at P3. But when I leave S6, I don't even want to smell milk.
Honorable agriculture is compulsory at basic, senior 1, senior 2. And then there is entrepreneurship where bookkeeping is.
What we are saying, this would be the right curriculum.
Oh, true.
But health science.
You're suggesting to push it towards
I
A level.
was lucky. I went to a Bulindi Farm School Secondary, where you are introduced to health science. Some people don't know this. Health science is what you're supposed to do if you're not a doctor. Doctors will do biology, health science, hygiene, nutrition, primary health care, preventive. Since we don't have a lot of budget for health medical scheme, let everybody has the basics of life. It is in health science. One book like this, it can be done in 2 years. So if you do that, then you can go into the bigger problems we are discussing. Now, we always talk about in economics of demographic dividend. We talk about transforming a country. The other day the presidency now is using now, I like he has raised the bar from what we're saying, middle income and the GDP growth. He has introduced what I like. Affluence. Human Development Index.
Really posh, isn't
The
it?
meals of food you get, how many go to school, decent accommodation. Affluence. The president, citizens, those who are in government of stealing money. The president has now raised the bar. He's no longer dying for middle income.
He wants to best power. He wants to best power with 1 million dropouts.
We have now agreed with me, who learned in my early economics
Class.
that when you are trying to transform your people, you don't use GDP growth and middle income. You use the Human Development Index, which can be summarized in affluence. And also the SDGs that I was talking about, don't leave anybody behind.
Right.
So if you talk about the affluence, clearly, education is a game changer. So the demographic dividend is only possible. What makes us from all the 4 parts of this country to speak here at the same wavelength is because we benefited from an enabling education system. Now imagine me, Bunyoro. You are celebrating oil. I don't have a university. Yet my people are supposed to go, Bunyoro.
You guys don't have a university.
The founders of Uganda.
You dumped UPC. Serves you right.
We have no university. I don't know how many committees. For the last 18, 20 years, we have committee after committee. Now this, we gave you Prime Minister Nabanja. We gave you Mateka Seita.
But the Makerere has many branches. You don't have.
That's interesting, actually.
Now, that's what I want to say. At the 100 years.
Why should every region have a university?
Yes. Now,
Tugumba, don't you have Tugumba?
No.
There is a university in Toro.
Let me tell you.
Mountains of the moon.
Makerere University is founded by the 15 regions of Uganda. We are shareholders. We are entitled. Now, I'm talking about the discrimination. The discrimination of some regions. I think people think if we had a university after discovering oil, we would have Nyangere rebellion, we would have some civic competence, we would have engagement. But I want to end by the entitlement of the private citizens. The private children in private secondary schools and primary are citizens of Uganda. Just recently we had a debate at the university in Dallas that those in the private sponsorship should not get money from, but they are going to treat you who? They are entitled. So please, education is a common good, is a public good. And whoever does not know this discrimination of infrastructure and the books you are talking about, when you prepare the government schools without preparing the private schools, then you don't love this country.
All right.
So what patriotism are we talking about?
Let's shift
when
on.
some people have lost certain cows to go to Makerere, others are pure on the government, and you are saying be patriotic. How?
Let's just shift our gears now and go to higher institutions of learning. And I'll begin with you, Professor Baryamureeba. You are an educationist at that level, higher institutions of learning. One would say that is where so many people are looking at when they are looking at the final outcome.
Yeah, sort of ultimate, yes.
Ultimate. What do we need to change there? What is going wrong? The things that you think need to be addressed at that particular level?
Yeah, there is a lot that we need to do in that sector. And the Honorable here said that we produce around 1 million, but I think it's 500,000.
We produce 500,000.
500,000, no, we don't reach that.
All
yes.
tertiary institutions,
yes,
including diplomas.
It's less than 0.2 million.
That information is there. 489.
It doesn't reach, but let's leave it at that. If you are looking at total enrollment, fine. But the ones that are graduating, no. But let's leave it there. So, for me, I'll start with the public universities. The funding in the last 5 years has increased like 5 times. But when you look at where the money is going, it has 90% has gone into salaries. So the infrastructure, the teaching aids are still lacking. And the reason is that the government has decided to micromanage those public universities. The government needs to provide block funding to the universities, and they decide on their priorities. They put money everywhere, on the teachers, on infrastructure, on the teaching aids, on research, and so on. That's one area I think the government should do.
That's what we are listening.
The cost, when you left Makerere, the unresolved question was cost per unit.
Cost, yes.
So when you say government is funding, what percentage is he funding for a doctor, for a vet, so that when we say government is funding, does it fund the full cost of a student? Can you help us answer that question? Because I know.
You see, the issue is this. The input cost, for example, if you look at medicine, as of now, look at inflation and so on, it's around 25 million shillings.
For 4 years?
No, per term. And if you look at this arts humanities, it's around 10 million shillings.
Exactly.
But you see, for private students,
how much is government giving per student?
Private students, they are paying 2 million, 1.5 and so on. It's on the right side. But the government is bringing in money, but it is tying most of it to salaries. You know? So what I'm saying is that the funding from government has increased. But let the government provide that money as a block to the universities. So the universities decide, or the councils, on where to put the money. Because if you just provide the money to professors, and they don't have even like maybe laboratories, they don't have labs, good labs that are equipped. Because you can't only depend on donors, say donors will bring in money. So no, I think they should give them that leverage to decide on the budget, what they should put where. Having said that, we see there is a very, very big problem. When it comes to nursery schools, primary schools, why don't require professors? Parents are paying 2 million shillings, 3 million shillings per term.
That was my first point.
Per term.
From nursery.
But in universities, I would call them 2 terms, 2 semesters. But if you charge, like now, most private universities, if you charge more than 1.5 million shillings, you not get students. So there's that problem. Yet you require highly qualified staff to teach at universities. So I think the government needs to come in, because people are poor, people cannot afford. The government should come and provide like some subsidies in the form of infrastructure or some facilities, because private universities are complementing government. Now, when you talk about the other tertiary institutions, in the past, most of the poor are going to universities, but I'm happy to say that these days, a good number of students are going into vocational and technical education. I see so many people graduating from UTAMU and other institutions. So that's a good thing. We need to put more money there so that people get these hands-on skills, the vocational skills. But the sector is steadily improving. We just need to have more reforms. And one key reform that we need for the higher education sector is that act. These lawyers, they know it. The University and Other Tertiary Act, it has lots of issues. We have had several white papers since 2001, but nothing has been done up to today. So that act is really, really bad. We need to have it amended so that we can have a good legal framework for the higher education sector. But I think if you continue at this pace and continue investing in technical colleges, vocational institutions, we shall get there. We shall get there.
There's a feeling that the universities are not doing enough on issues to do with research and solving the emerging problems like other universities are actually doing.
But you see,
what's the problem there?
At times I don't want us to lie to ourselves. Like somebody to come up and tell me that I love this Kira EV, by the way, that company, this electric car and so on. We started on at Macquarie University as Vice Chancellor. But we can't at Kira EV will compete even with the like terrorists of Elon Musk and other whatever, because they're investing in billions of dollars. Their research budget is going almost into trillions of dollars. So here, if you're talking about research, you need money. Research, you need to invest money into research.
And now it's donor funded.
And even here in Uganda, here in Uganda, we don't have an entity, a national entity that has money for research. You find little money in agriculture, some money in ICT, some money in science, technology and innovation, some money where fragmented. So we really need some good money to be put in research, support research and innovation. And we don't have that centralized entity. And I think we should have it in place.
All right. Spectrum X on Radio 1 FM 90. We need to go for a break now. When we return, we'll hear from Joseph, we'll hear from Dr. Sarah Bireete, and also the Honorable Stephen Mukitale on the issues of higher education. There are also comments coming in from you listeners. I'll be reading some of them so that the panel can reflect and respond to some of the issues that you're putting across. Stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90. We'll be back.
Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us. We are live on Radio 1 FM 90, reviewing the major events of the week, but this time around focusing on the education subsector, looking at how things are shaping out and what we need to actually change as a country, because this particular sector is very important for the development of our country. That's where we get the manpower that will be able to change the things that we want to improve in this country. And I'm speaking to four panelists: Professor Venansius Baryamureeba, Hon Stephen Mukitale Birahwa, Dr. Sarah Bireete, and Mr. Joseph Ochieno. We had a discussion around the primary level of education, the things that need to change there. And one of the things that came out is actually more funding to that particular sector, but also looking at issues to do with the curriculum, where the panelists suggested that we need to introduce skills so that by the time a child is leaving P7, they have some skills to do certain things. But also they also say the same about the secondary level of education, implying that there are cross-cutting issues in both areas. Now we are looking at the higher institutions of learning, but you already have some comments that are coming in from you, the listeners, so I'll read out some of the comments before we actually move forward. Our education system needs a major overhaul. According to a recent report by the World Bank, less than 1% of the university degree holders in Uganda know what a stock market is. It's no wonder that people are starting businesses, they struggle to mobilize capital. But why is this happening? Our education system is locally irrelevant, out of date, and not globally competitive. Then he adds, the productivity of a country is not linked to education system. It's time to rethink the purpose of education. Let's prioritize financial literacy and prepare our students for the global economy. As the ancient Greek philosopher Plutarch said, the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled. We need an education system that ignites curiosity, creativity, and critical thinking. It's time to act and create a change. Let's come together and demand a better education system that prepares our students for the future. That's a comment from Louis Kizito. I'm a primary teacher. One remuneration to teachers at least 4 million. Raising up UPE funds to at least 40k per pupil. Provide lunch to teachers and breakfast. Stop inspection, which is aimed at victimizing teachers than supporting or supervising them. That's a teacher there who actually says remuneration for primary school teachers should be increased to 4 million shillings, 40k for capitation grant, and then provide meals to the teachers. Grants not 20k per term per child, because our school receives 4 million per term with a population of 881 pupils. That's another comment there. John Mayanja Well, we have Sharif writing in and saying, I think education must be uniform. The classroom at Kampala parents should be the same at Chiboga. Same uniforms, same school fees, and probably bigger salary for teachers in rural areas. Then we can have equal competition. Please ask Mr. Honorable Mukitale, where is our old head teacher for Kalinabiri Primary School, Mr. Danze John Mayanja? We have another comment from Enrique in Chiwenda who says, nice program, Kenneth, beside the expensiveness, why is it that important subjects were scrapped from the syllabus long ago? For example, office practice, TD, technical drawing, PE, physical education, bookkeeping, etc. These were essential subjects. We have another comment from Iga Samuel Mary who says, thank you for the program. I really applaud schools for the efforts they are doing in our nation, but skilling should start right away from primary level. Pumping theory to children is the main cause of job scarcity in the country. Another thing, more vocational schools should be put in place to get job seekers. Ultimately, free education scholarships should be done and boosted by the government. Incremental funding to schools in order to cater for many children with fees constraints should be considered. Children talents should also be considered, and infrastructures be put in place. That's a comment there from that gentleman. We have a long one here from George Ofono, the youth chairperson in Nyangole sub-county in Tororo. He says, how can we ensure access to quality education for all? Education is a basic right, and it's crucial to find ways to make it accessible to every child in Uganda, regardless of their background, location, etc. Then he says, are our teachers equipped with necessary skills and resources? Our educators are the backbone of the education system. We need to support them with a continuous training, adequate resources, and a positive work environment to enhance their teaching abilities. And then he says, are we nurturing creativity and critical thinking? Education shouldn't be just about memorization and regurgitation. We need to focus on developing skills like problem solving, creativity, critical thinking, which are essential for innovation. So many comments still coming in, but let's move on and hear from Joseph. Higher education.
That's why everybody will do math. You wait for the next 5 years. Continue.
Joseph.
You know, I genuinely do not have major issues with the curriculum. I'll just come back to say that our educational system has collapsed in part because we turned it into profit, and we decided to appetite it in the sense that, well, those who have and those who haven't, and then rural versus the other. Really what we need at a higher level is what we need really across board. Meaning the foundation for education must really start with parents, starting at home, meaning a holistic education in nation state in which families and parents are people, as well as mothers actually, as well as the time when they're expecting, that their guide is supported, meaning investment, stated public investment in parenting, public investment in enabling children as early as 1, 2, 3, by the time they start nursery education, that they're in an environment which is convenient. I've always said that I never went to nursery school, but the environment I had in my home, my family was privileged, that I was the last born of him. We're completely net, to the extent that I learned how to write from my father in our compound in Agongera, and that is photographic onto me, to the extent therefore that by the time I went to primary school, I excelled and jumped classes. By the time I went to Mwiri, I was quite content with my colleagues who had gone to Mwiri Primary School, who normally have been the majority privileged those who would have attended nursery education here.
More money in the nursery than in universities.
You made that point. That's very interesting. Most of the parents we are talking about are parents really in much more urbanized spaces. And these are the things that need to be reviewed. In many other nation states, including for me, part of my interest in this subject is my involvement in the British government's Labour Party policy reforms in terms of injecting resources into nursery education. Up to, I think, about 20 years ago actually, nursery education was not necessarily free and compulsory. And some of the people who made major competition, I'm bringing it for here, was to push that, making 3 to 5 year olds have access to free nursery education, building foundations. Ken, I know where you're shaking your head in terms of higher education. Those foundations in lower units of education, quality across secondary education takes us to higher education. Means therefore that by the time we reach universities, there is critical thinking and our readiness in terms of knowing what and where the world is. Higher education needs, a review of funding gaps, meaning that we need to inject more resources, and I repeat that we'll need to inject resources in funding. And I know we shouted at this regime and they started funding elements of infrastructure, meaning roads. They're not still doing it enough. We need to inject more resources in education. We need to inject more resources in health than we're doing at the moment. And indeed, yes, we need to continue injecting resources in infrastructure. In education, part of the areas where we need to be able to be injecting resources majorly is research, as has already been suggesting. It's extraordinary that most of our research are done are supported by donors, foreign fund funders, most of whom come with agenda. I was lucky to have done a series of researches in foreign universities, and normally, actually, the part of the ethical element of professors here, when you're actually making suggestions, they will critique you of who is going to be involved because they don't want biases in your program. Research, therefore, should not be about universities. Where is UTRO of this world? Where are the Kawandas of this world? Some of these other smaller institutions where perhaps the research does not necessarily involve university graduate equivalent needs to be supported. The more we do that, the more we equip these institutions, the more perhaps we shall have less pressure for people going for degrees, but branching off, knowing very well that some of the researchers that we have who don't necessarily have degrees are competent people because they will be able to have access to jobs and they will be able to compete, including a possibility of post-senior 6 going to do a diploma course, and beyond that, you're so competent that perhaps you've got grants to go ahead and do a master's degree in a particular area, should you want to be able to do so without necessarily having a first degree.
We have a comment coming in from Fred, excluding parents' PTA from running affairs of schools is one of those bad policies, just like the policy of owning the Muvle tree by local government rather than by the owner of land in Busoga was. The owners of land decided to kill the tree until the law was reversed. Are we waiting for the schools to die like the Muvle tree in Busoga was before we reverse the policy of excluding parents from an all-inclusive primary school thriving? That's Fred there. Spectrum X on primary education in most districts in eastern Uganda. The few first and second grade are in private primary schools. 3 or 4 contribute to all the numbers, but the biggest number of pupils from UPE schools, the story is not good. On our secondary education, 2 things. When government terminated partnership with private schools on UCE without government seed schools in rural areas, very many kids in rural areas dropped out of schools. How then will they implement the new curriculum? The ministry supplied books for the new curriculum when children were in senior 3. Really, what's wrong with us? How then shall they perform? Then we have Isaac. He is a chairperson of a school management committee, a Church of Uganda founded primary school in Luero. He says he went to that school in the 70s. By the time he started, the school didn't have primary 6 and primary 7. But when the SMC, the school management committee, requested for teachers, in order to have P6 and P7, the church mobilized parents to construct mud water houses for the 2 teachers. When the schools were in place, the teachers were availed to the school. I and my 3 colleagues got Division A and then. When I went back in 2012, the school had turned into a shell of its past. When I became the chairperson of SMC, I and my colleagues on the same committee, we found no houses for the 10 teachers. The toilets had collapsed. Even teachers are sharing toilets with their pupils. Well, that's a comment there. And then there's somebody else who is actually asking us, kindly talk about the fee structure for different schools. Is government the one to regulate or everybody for themselves? Dr. Sarah Bireete.
Well, I will start with the digital transformation roadmap that was passed by government last year. In my church-founded school, where I studied my primary, and which got 6 first grades in these exams, we have a computer lab that we have constructed as old students, and it's empty. What is the contribution of government to this is a church-founded school that is now government. But the old students, I think, do 90% of the work. And this is what has attributed to what Honorable Mukitale is saying, that Ochieno is back in the top-ranking schools. We had the district education officer, who is now the headmaster for Ontari School, that really worked all schools in the last 3 to 5 years and revived education in Ochieno. I think most of the credit for the good performance that people are enjoying is attributed to Mr. Sauro Ramporo, who is now headmaster Ontari School.
Not my brother Norman Lukumu was there for
other people also did a foundation, but I'm talking of this recent work. He really worked schools and revived them, including trying to modernize every school. Our church-founded school had collapsed until when we came forward and said, this cannot be. Because it's part of who we are. I studied for 7 years in that school.
All right. Higher education. Actually, I saw you are one of the parents who escorted a student to graduate from Makerere this particular week.
Yes,
higher education. What needs to change?
Yesterday. Yeah, for me, at higher education, and just allow me one comment, lower secondary education, which builds into higher education, discrimination in remuneration of teachers. Teachers are a very important component of society. We are all what we are because of teachers, whose hands we have passed through.
We used to eat bread and butter, children of teachers, now they mogo.
So when you start by saying science teachers, although that parts of science teachers, I'm told it does not go to primary. It is not yet, it's just secondary school. Science teachers, you are paying them 4 million. You want their supervisors, some headmasters, if they are artists, to be earning 1 million and supervise somebody of earning 4 million. Schools have gone through. When I see MPs debating increment in school fees, I even laugh. When you promote discrimination in remuneration, what do you expect schools to do? To keep their staff fully remunerated. They had to increase fees to cover the gap of the discrimination created by our parliament and the political elite in this country. The politicians created a crisis for schools. The same crisis goes to university. When you say professors at Makerere are earning, I think minimum is 15 million.
16.
Yes, around there. So why do you expect a professor to remain at KIU if he doesn't have the 16 million? You shift human resource from private universities because they want also to benefit from their efforts of studying. So this discrimination in remuneration has distorted the human resource in education institutions, and it needs to stop. Parliament had promised that the money for equalizing this discrimination would be in the next parliament. I want to report here that it is not
in the next
budget.
Yes, in the next budget. It is not in the new budget framework passed this week. It is still missing, and that's why there was those rumors of UNATO going on strike.
All right.
All commitments are not even met.
All right. We have a comment from Andrew Angi, tuned in from Toronto, who actually agrees with you. Says discrimination on the salary scale has spoiled the education system of Uganda, and he says he rests his case. And then we have many failures of A-level. Taking on education at the university is also alarming. People fail at A-level, and then they opt to study BA in education, and they become teachers, and he's saying it also becomes a problem. Dear panelists, the other thing affecting education is in assessment. Can you imagine the insinuation that there is standard teaching countrywide? This is just a myth, in my opinion. Now, when assessment of pupils are done, teachers don't set tests. Instead, they buy ready tests. Things which are set by the so-called experts don't tally with what a child from Ochieno's Serere Primary School learned. Therefore, the outcome is what we see at the level of the courses entirely. We have another comment. Spectrum Extra, I hear your conversation about lack of textbooks. You have not even talked about the quality of books and novels on the curriculum. We even have textbooks with broken English.
Yes.
Who removed the old tested books, such as Nile English course, J.A. Bright, etc., from the curriculum? That's a comment there from Tom. Honorable Mukitale, very quickly, as we wind up this discussion.
I want to...
We are looking at higher education.
I want, first of all, to amplify the point of discrimination, demotivation, but again, the killer policy reversal. Most of the children in Uganda are going to government schools, they're going to private schools. So when government makes a policy, a confusing policy, like discriminating scientists...
Have you looked at enrollment in government schools versus private?
It also affects... I'm telling you, you get that we are going to have a census, and education also have the head counts. The same private schools are being demanded to pay the very money government is paying.
Yes, yes, you will lose
equal
the
for the
human
professors
resource.
of the private school. So that's already confusion enough. By the way, as we discuss that discrimination, why these graduates we are celebrating, I talked about employability, I talked about productivity, I talked about relevance. Do you know, since we started whispering about mergers and restructuring in the last 3 years, do you know how demotivated and withdrawn the point those entities are?
Especially mentioning without action.
They don't know they are tomorrow. Bring a policy when you are ready. If you don't,
you know.
So people are now, the very teachers who are demotivated, they are saying, let me go and do another business somewhere. Because there is no future here. So government must be very clear on these things. Now, before I talk about expired courses, some courses we found in universities at the end of the 80s have been balkanized into so many small courses. Now, when they are validated, you say they are expired. No wonder.
Expired degree.
Every graduate now, we knew it was medicine and law where you required to go a back course at LODC and go for intern. Now, almost every course you need to be retooled. A big crisis. Now, what miracle do we expect from universities? From children who have gone from this exam-based performance, you passed P7, you passed S4, you passed S6, and therefore you are admitted.
Parrot running.
Lecturers in the first year are having a problem even to read the texts. Children are writing WhatsApp English in a paper. Now, I understand why people like we used to blame Chinese and the Russians. You spend the first years learning the fundamentals.
Yes.
The pedagogy, the philosophy, the ideology, the language, communication skills. These are required by every graduate. I think in Uganda, the first year should not be for specialization.
All right.
The first year should impact.
And traditionally, it wasn't anyway.
In every student that you are going to do some bookkeeping, computer must be across the board. Everybody in year one should get what makes you employable, what makes you an effective communicator, what makes you patriotic, what makes you care for others. Because in absence of that, we are just talking of numerical, quantitative graduations without actually providing the relevancy. I've been asking a question, and I asked it from the time I went to Parliament. Why do you give a quota system? In Buliisa, where I'm lacking a doctor, where I'm lacking a vet, a fisheries. Then you give me a quota, that time 11 children, in funny courses. In the manpower development I was talking about, labor and industry, these regions have different endowments. Therefore, we should have provided the best manpower for their industry, for their industrialization, for what they will need. That if I know Kabare Chigezi in the highlands, in the tourism area, this is what they want. Where do I want them to be 20 years from now? All state house scholarships, all government funding, and all quotas should give them that human resource for that industrialization. West Nile, the same. But what do we have? We are celebrating 27 years of UPE. We are celebrating, I think now, 25 years of quota system. But what we have got out of it does not define what education. Education is to draw out from man.
All right.
What makes him relevant to environment. But if what we are graduating does not answer that question, the whole education system needs a surgery in terms of curriculum, in terms of costing. And I'm saying costing. We are putting too much money to produce a graduate at more than 200 million for those who are in average life. 200 million in Buliisa, I will buy 2 boats of engine, a Massey Ferguson tractor, I will give a maize mill and irrigation. And that's why some old parents, and I want to bring in this, we suffered what used to call Magendo, we used to call Samula, we used to call it the Chibanda.
All right.
Education had lost value because teachers were, when I first stopped buying bread, when they lost value, people thought we can lose out to education.
All right.
People started selling cows to give their children businesses. Don't go to school. Our best friends stopped going to school because at that time they say it's useless to go to school. So somebody who has lost 25 cows to produce a graduate and has no job for 4 years and is going back to buy a shirt. Parents in public
Our
policy
graduates are still good.
in the public policy
There may be issues,
by the fifth
still have very good graduates.
we go back to stay at home and forget about it.
We have a comment coming in from.
must stand up.
We have a comment coming in from Dr. Peter Babienda, who is teaches at Makerere University. Says most courses at least at Makerere offer what Honorable Mukitale is saying. Further, most skills are either trained in vocational institutions or on job training or learning. That's what he says, and he says thanks for the program. Now, gentlemen and lady, very quickly, there's this issue of school fees. One particular person asked us to talk about it. As we open the schools on Monday, very many people are concerned about that. Do you think the government has a capacity to actually determine what schools should charge? Dr. Bireete, very quickly in a few seconds.
By the way, government, even on most of these government schools, you see the big schools, the contribution of government is teacher remuneration. If you pick the big schools, Gayaza, Budo, Smack, teacher salaries. Budo, a building, a house of students caught fire. They thought the government would come on board. That government, that was rebuilt by individuals with no single contribution from government. Some people, I know Parliament at one time went to investigate, thinking the government puts money on table and schools are overcharging parents. They put nothing on table. So how do you control fees in schools where your contribution does not go beyond half salary? Because some schools, co-fund even the salaries.
But it's not what he's saying.
Professor Baryamureeba.
If you pay a government teacher, let's say at Budo or Gayaza, 4 million, science teacher, Kitende will also raise fees to retain such a teacher and pay the same.
They need to catch up.
And if people in us have not been paid the same, the school will charge more to pay them. And that's what
I
happened.
want to add that even we had to increase fees at King's College Bodo to match the remuneration of arts teachers with sciences, because you cannot run a school where people are remunerated differently.
Government should provide that money and the fees
They
will come down.
created a crisis for schools and they cannot discuss one end of this crisis.
Joseph.
And that's what I was saying at the beginning, and people will think it's about politicking and 38 years of a failed regime. Government's responsibility across the world, including the most capitalist society in this world, meaning America. Government still subsidizes key elements of private education. So really, what is required is parents listening to me, including those who want to go and break the bank over the weekend, should know that they already pay sufficient taxes, and that there are some people, including some parliamentarians who are junior ministers, who roll with 20 security people as if they're thieves, costing us 20 million shillings per week, that those monies need to be reviewed so that government mobilizes sufficient resources to pump into schools. I'm actually shocked that the Budo schools about which I wrote in my column in the Monitor, to date, government did not intervene to make provisions for those. So no, it's the responsibility of governments to provide for this. And we have enough money as a country. If only monies got away from corruption, thanks to my sister Betty Kamia, and we stop spending on the privileges of Mr. Museveni and his personal security and invest in our future. That's investing in our education.
I will end with an appeal. We are all OBs and OGs of some schools. Can we go back home?
We are trying our best we are trying in our best.
OBs.
I was saying
That is what I do. No, Mr. Stephen.
My point. For me, I don't believe in
Very
this
quickly,
government
Honorable.
of Yambi. Because I also know in the world of government, there is nothing. So far, the priorities are different. I am saying, where OBs, you see in Tari.
No, you're minimizing my point. Yes,
I'm making my point.
Yeah. In Tari, we can't compare with Tari. We know what Tari is to this country.
If you all went to Mwiri, you can make a difference.
Oh, we are doing it. By the way,
If you go to my primary school, we can make a difference.
Are you saying,
And I am appealing.
are you saying the government has failed and the citizens should take over the arm of
You
government?
can interpret it as an intellectual. My Muslim, take charge of your school.
Thank you. Let me also make my point before they cut us off.
In a few seconds,
A few seconds for me, my appeal is to the Minister of Education and Sports. On top of the fees, there are so many things schools are asking for. You find parents paying like almost 1.5 million.
Common sense issues.
That.
all right. With that, we come to the end of Spectrum Extra. Thank you very much for joining us. I've been your host, Kenneth Lukwagandason. Thank you very much, and do stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90 for our quality programming.
Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. An extra hour of analysis and discussion on the topical issues of the week. Brought to you by Housing Finance Bank, a financial institution regulated by Bank of Uganda. Housing Finance Bank, we make it easy.
The views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of this radio station or its management.